Hello, I'm Nancy Daniels, a K-State Research and Extension Specialist in the area of community vitality, and I'm here to report to the community about the Carbondale First Impressions process. The process began when Yates Center asked for first impressions, and I reached out to Carbondale, and you graciously agreed to be the partner. It's almost the ideal spacing apart. We'd like you to be far enough away from each other that you're not aware of each other's town, but we choose you based on the similar population. The pandemic caused us to delay for about 6 months, but finally in September, I came and trained the Carbondale volunteers about the visit and the survey and took photos of your lovely town. 3 visitors came in separate cars in October and November, and then we're presenting this by video recording, and your Carbondale team is going to use the results for further discussion and action plan. So first, a little background. Why do we even do first impressions? Well, like everything else, we get a little bit immune to how things look in our towns or in our homes. And we need a fresh look from somebody else to give their perspective. The most common outcome is that you remember just how proud you are of your community, but it helps you to notice things that you can improve and set goals and priorities for doing other things. Just remember, these are a point in time observation by visitors who came into your community. If you don't agree with their observation, and you well might not, there are even conflicting observations, but just be curious why the visitor might see it that way. I want to begin with a little research to help you know what is true about rural, because we have some ideas in our head about what is true, but the research proves us wrong. Ben Winchester is a senior research fellow who is from the University of Minnesota, who's been doing sociology research on rural communities for more than 20 years. And he wants us to know that rural, like urban community I live in, is changing. It is not dying though. Brain gain is a trend that people aren't as aware of as they are of brain drain. But it's a trend where 30 to 49-year-olds choose to go back to rural places after they've explored their career, and then they start their families and they want to come back and give their children the same great opportunities they experienced in a rural town. But many of them have never been to your town. And so you will hear us talk a lot about why you need to make what you know about your town very aware to everybody else. Just to give you a perspective, I live in Topeka, and I would tell you that rural is in the middle of everywhere. Topeka is in the middle of everywhere. No matter where you live, you work one place, you live another place, and you play another place. Even though I'm here with lots of jobs, I chose a job that's an hour away from me at K-State Research and Extension in Manhattan. And so will you. Likely you will take the choice that's best for you. With transportation, as long as you have a car and internet, everything's possible. You need to know that almost half of Kansas households moved in a 4-year period, and that trend is still going on. There's a lot of circulation in our homes and between homes, even in between communities. When research was done in rural Nebraska, they found out that when people come to rural areas, they come for many reasons: a simpler pace of life, safety and security, affordable housing, outdoor recreation. This pandemic taught us about just how important it was to be able to get out and walk and enjoy the outdoors. So it's always been true, but more than ever, we appreciate it. And quality schools, they want to know that their children are going to get a good education. But surprisingly, a job is not in the top 10 reasons. And so really think about your community and what you have to offer. Be aware that people in small towns actually don't know everybody. The quality of life is enhanced by those relationships. So the more you can get to know each other, the better your community is. Invite the newcomers. You know, an idea that Ben proposes is a newcomers meal. And he suggests that only newcomers be invited to those meals because they'll be shocked when they look around the room and realize they're not the only new persons that came into the community that year. And not only will they be surprised, but you will be surprised as the host to realize that your community isn't as that it actually does turn over in ways that you don't understand. We really have to think about how we present ourselves to others. Make your words and your actions consistent. Don't say you have to live here 20 years to be an insider, and don't act like it either. Now, this is something Ben brought to our attention. In every small community and in every large community, there are baby boomers who, upon their death or transition to a medical facility, will leave a home. And if nobody's taking care of it, pretty soon that home becomes, instead of an asset, it becomes a liability to your community. So think about, as you think about your community, for you baby boomers, consider building a smaller house, a duplex, or something that provides maintenance-free options for care or simple care, rather than staying in that 4-bedroom house that somebody else might need. We need to get out of those large homes and free them up for other people a lot sooner than we do. The data, according to the data, the 2020 estimate of your census is 1,300, which is down a little bit since the last census of 1,437. Median household income is, as we expected in smaller towns, lower, but so is your cost of living. Your high school or GED is very equivalent to the Kansas average. However, your college education level is lower than the Kansas average. Now, an observation that I'm coming to understand is that no data is bad data. This is not a judgment that you need to get everybody college educated. It's just a statement of what kind of community you have. And that's, you know, think about that as it relates to all of this data. You are a younger community than the Kansas average, and your poverty rate is a little higher than we'd like it to be. We want everybody to have a sustainable income. The web presence, this is what your website looked like in January when I downloaded this image. And your visitors observed that the website was informative and helpful and included lots of good links. However, another observer said that the pages we found seemed to be useful for someone that lived there, but not necessarily someone looking to visit or looking for attractions. And I will tell you, I guess I didn't tell you earlier, there's a corollary report along with this where all of the visitors' reports are compiled into one document. And the report that I'm giving to you tonight just highlights some representative observations. When I have italicized words, as I do on this page, those are my observations. I found a Facebook page that looks like this. And whenever I see one that says things to do in Carbondale, Kansas, then I know it's a Facebook generated page. And people who are smarter than I am tell me that this can be edited and taken over as your own location. This is neither good nor bad. I think maybe, from my perspective, you should embrace the fact that you have, as your motto says, all the assets of a big city within easy drive for you. So for what it's worth, all of these locations are in Topeka. There were on your Facebook, when I asked for Carbondale pages that were linked to Carbondale, Kansas, I counted more than 40 Facebook pages. And this is an opportunity for you to get together. I'll say more about this at the end, and just comment on the things that are going on and cross promote the things that are going on in your area. Your visitors noted that everything is on one of two main roads through town or easily accessed from the main roads. They only found 2 liquor stores and no restaurants or entertainment options. One visitor felt that the town needed a facelift. They were all impressed with the new library, and most, if not all, saw the childcare on the east side. One visitor said, I kept looking for something to draw my attention, and I finally found the pool. And this is an indication of how our visitors are constantly comparing their town with yours. And in some ways, they are very different towns because Yates Center, your partner, is an hour away from any town of any size. And yet it has lots and lots of business buildings around the town square. So, but they did see the well-maintained streets, and you will see that one visitor said, which is quite different than our community. So I'm going to give you time to kind of look at these pictures and see what they say to you. This would have been your town on a morning in September. Downtown, again, the new library is impressive. Not many buildings in the business area. The historic buildings are not in use. It was easy to see what businesses were there. Did not see any retail except for grocery and 2 liquor store. Noticed a barber shop. The signage they thought was a little bit weak. They had to really look for City Hall, which was closed when that visitor was there. Again, an opportunity to see what the camera saw. Kept thinking I was putting the same picture up twice, but they really are different buildings. Our survey asks about downtown amenities, and they tend to comment on the things that we ask about. And so you'll see that in their comments. They saw benches, but not much else. The public restrooms were at the gas station, and honestly, that's where all the public restrooms are in a downtown, except for about 4 towns in the whole state of Kansas. We don't expect public restrooms, but it would be nice if the City Hall or the library or the quick shop, the local quick shop, is available for public restrooms. Parking was easy and you could access anything, but we often ask about whether or not it's available. There's more than one thing available from that spot. Wi-Fi, they weren't sure. There wasn't really a place to sit down, and we'll talk about that later. Other retail, yours is a little bit of a confusing thing to comment about because of the fact that we usually talk about the downtown being where the main street is. And then there's often a highway that runs next to it that is the other retail shopping. And it would be hard to know which one is which in Carbondale. And that's not a criticism. So it's just that people would comment on various things. They didn't find too much attraction, but they noted the liquor stores as the other retail shopping areas. From my perspective, I kind of considered the old Topeka Boulevard to be the other retail, and this is what I saw as I drove down that street. Industrial parks, visitors speculated about various areas that might be available for industrial placement. And they noted that this is very close to the Topeka Warehouse District, which is a huge asset for your community. And your local visiting team was quite aware of that opportunity. But we need you to know that a drive-by is not how industry will find you. But we are constantly talking about the fact that small businesses are the responsible for more than half of the new jobs that are created every year. So the opportunity to use one of those downtown buildings to create a business for a one-person entrepreneur is always there. They saw your healthcare services, beautiful downtown Cotton O'Neill Clinic and the corresponding pharmacy behind it. They didn't notice the chiropractic, but you do also have that. They saw the retirement home off the highway that looked in good condition. Housing is a huge thing for visitors, and like most small towns, this isn't so much a comment on available housing as just the housing that's there, period. They found most of the properties to be fairly clean and appealing for those who want to buy. And boy, you sure like to hear this for a community like Carbondale. It seemed like a nice place to raise a family if you don't mind driving to find a place to eat. There are very few new builds in the city limits, and there are very few houses actually available to buy. As I said, that's true in almost all small towns. They did see some homes that looked like they could use some love, but they had expected that there might be fewer homes given that there weren't so many businesses. So here's what the camera saw. I really try to capture housing from all over the town, but frankly, sometimes when I get ready for the presentation, I forget which part of the town these homes are from. A few homes for sale. Rental housing. For the people who were able to go to City Hall, we really like to hear that there's a list of rental owners. That's kind of the norm that we expect, is that the City Hall will have a list of landlords. It's impossible to keep up with what's available, but just a list of landlords. And they did notice an apartment complex on the south side of town. The data about your housing says that you have 628 housing units. This is from the census data. Your occupancy rate is a little bit lower than the Kansas average at 85%. Owner occupied is right at the Kansas average. About 2/3 are owner occupied and 1/3 renter occupied. Family households, this is a reflection. I like to see that higher than usual norm, because those families, the family is defined as any home that has children younger than 18 in the home, whether or not they're related. And those are the people that are going to use your schools. We saw some evidence of homes that needed to be cleaned up or demolished. Schools is an important first impressions observation because, as Ben observes, people are going to want to know that their kids are going to get a good education. Your attendance center serves the 4th through 8th grades, according to the visitors, and they were aware that there were other schools nearby. They said further out, for a small community, everything is measured in terms of miles equals minutes. So if you can convey just how close those are on your websites, that's a great asset, just a reminder. The school looks like, according to one visitor, it could use a good power wash. Another visitor thought that it was a pretty park-like setting with lots of trees. On the day that I was there, the kids were doing band practice outdoors and having recess, which was very appealing to see that kind of flexibility. It's really important how you communicate your school, how the schools communicate to others. They found the website, but there wasn't anything there about accomplishments or accolades. And, they're in Carbondale, why you like your schools. And I've seen some really nice examples, but probably the best one I found was recently I was looking for Mound City, Kansas, and found Mound City, Missouri. And this is probably the best example I've seen of telling people why you like what makes you love your school. They stuck with data like graduation rate and technology and teacher ratio. I have seen some small towns who talk about the fantastic debate program or the technology program. One small town said, we have a marching band that is so outstanding that a third of the school is in the marching band. And so those are the kinds of anecdotes, even beyond and including data. Tell us, why do you love your school? Because potential students are also an audience for your website. One thing that makes everything, both your local website, your city website, and the school website appealing, is people actually engaging with each other. And so for me, this communicates to me that you're science-based and you're going to keep my student healthy and strong. So photos, pictures of people in action, and data and anecdotes are all good ways to make your schools more available for the potential student. Childcare. We seldom are aware of childcare in the town. It's not a very good strength of a first impressions visitors, but all the visitors saw your childcare center just off of Highway 75. According to the data, though, Osage County, and again, this is county data, not just Carbondale, and it may not even be exemplary. If you believe that most people are going to Topeka and to work and they're taking their children with them, then maybe you don't consider this a problem. But childcare is a really important part of your economic development plan. And it's a really important part of your early education plan so that your schools can excel because your early childhood education is of high quality. So if you need help with either quality or quantity, I encourage you to reach out to Child Care Aware. Faith and religion. Our visitors found a number of churches, but they weren't your typical churches with the large denominations we expect to see. The buildings were older, but they appeared to be operating. And these are the ones that we found. Civic organizations. We see your community building. What an asset that is. They saw evidence of the Lions Club and their work in the community. There was a community building with things going on. Make those as apparent to people as you can. This is a good example of first impressions visitors. They all looked at your streets as part of your public infrastructure and had really varying, or maybe they're exactly the same, really good, decent, not terrible streets. I thought that was kind of funny. They didn't notice many sidewalks, and we're not very good at noticing that, but do pay attention to walkability, because walkability is something that people really want. It contributes to quality of life. And when you have walkable streets and sidewalks, you'll notice people start to use them too. Street signage was found to be acceptable. At City Hall, one visitor, and we already noted that somebody said that City Hall was closed when they were there, but one visitor said that she was very well received and she offered lots of good information. And that was my experience when I was at City Hall too. Fire, EMS, and police services are really important to you as residents. But we aren't very good at noticing anything other than the buildings as observers who come into your town. The reason I put this here is because I have been made aware through this whole first impressions process just how important your ISO rating is. Sometimes our volunteer fire departments don't have the equipment or training they need to be well classified under ISO. And so that has a big impact on your insurance ratings. If your ISO rating is as high as it can be, then that's something to brag about on your websites and make that well known to people. Brand new and beautiful. The old library is quite obviously quite cramped. But the new library is something to truly look forward to. City parks. Your visitors felt they were nice, but they are near the active railroad track and outside the main parts of town. They were quaint. One person thought they could use some love. I never overlook a nicely maintained restroom. That's quite an asset and quite an investment in your parks. And, I never overlook that. That's congratulations. It looked like the park was a place, and the pool and the ballpark were a nice place for kids to enjoy during the summer months. And boy, wouldn't this be a more compelling picture if it had a family reunion going through it? We're in a pandemic, and I was there on a weekday. That's not going to happen, but I'm just saying that if you had a thoughtful photographer who could capture your community having fun in these locations, it would make quite an impression. Let you stop and look and see what you see here. This specifically, I caught this one because it is a sidewalk running to the parks, which I really like to see. Part of the thing that you have going for you is that walkability, that sense of free range kids. I probably wouldn't allow my kids in Topeka, Kansas to walk very far to the park, but you can let them walk all over town, and that's quite the thing. This is what I saw on the day that I was there. My photography is admittedly limited for the access that I have and the camera that I use, which is just an iPhone. Natural or man-made features, if you have them, we don't know what they are. So it's not necessarily, no community is going to have all of these things, but if you feel like there's something that would draw people, tell us about it, because we didn't notice it. Visitor center. in any community your size, we would expect that that would be City Hall. And as your visitor said, it was easy to find. What would bring you back? Well, that's a tough one because there are no restaurants, and that's what people thrive around. So, that may not be a tourist destination. You are not, at least not at the moment. The most positive observations are included: the park is nice, the retirement facility looks nice, the gas station is updated, and the library is going to be amazing. It's a decent bedroom community. The potential, it's located close to Topeka. Those are the things that you knew about your town too. One person said that the street maintenance was great. Really nice parks with accessible public restrooms and trash, small and quiet. There's a lot of opportunity for their main strip through town. It reminded them of another town that had quite a few businesses going and accessible from one spot. They saw this as the obstacle, and it is an obstacle if you want your town to be self-sufficient and have everything in it. But I don't think that's where we are in the year 2021. It is so close to the state capital. It's only 12 miles to anything you possibly want: restaurant, entertainment, retail. So honestly, access to a larger city is its biggest hindrance. Well, it's his biggest hindrance if we want to develop those things in Carbondale, but it's automatically done for you otherwise. It needs a major facelift, having mainly to do with cleanup. Just sprucing up the place would help, with houses and buildings cleaned and painted. Again, do you see Topeka as an obstacle or as an asset? What will you remember? One person felt that they'd remember that the town looked tired, and I'm sorry to tell you that. But they did see the value of great public infrastructure, the streets and the roads and the park, and that's fantastic. So here's my recommendations based on what your visitors said. You have a great slogan that I think is very consistent with your assets. Small town comforts, big city connections. That's a great slogan. Put it everywhere and use that as your guiding principle for the kind of town you want to be. You don't need to be all of those other things. If you are a great place to live, that's enough. Get to know each other. Place emphasis on the relationships, connections, and inclusion. Those are the things that will make it your town a great place to live. I have seldom been with a visiting team like the Carbondale First Impressions team that was so enthusiastic about their hometown. They talked about the way that you respond when somebody's in trouble, the way that you help each other. And those are things to make people aware of and make sure that everybody feels that way, not just a few. Really, you've got some really easy, low-hanging fruit. Just continue to think about and enhance the places that you already love. The school, the park, show photos of your town having fun together. Consider the walkability issues. Do you have safe paths to school? And that is capitalized because there are grants available for both safe paths to school and walking trails. So consider whether or not those are things that could be enhanced. In one community, our visitors said, "I love your walking path." And the local town said, "We considered that the sidewalk that took us to Dollar General." But it's true. You put a big, wide walking path out there, and there were people walking their dogs and really doing some, they were using it. They weren't just trying to get to Dollar General. You get a nice walking trail and people will use it. One thing that I love is, and I'm going to talk more about it, but really think about becoming an idea-friendly town where you embrace everybody's ideas and let them go for whatever it is that they want to do. You know, if an event, a certain event isn't your cup of tea, say, yes, let's do it. Count me in to help. Or I've got a different idea, but I think yours is worth trying. So really embrace everybody's ideas and their willingness to help. What we want to do is the kind of community development where, just like your first impressions visitors from your town, they were all about the opportunities in this town. We are a town that cares for one another. We are so close to Topeka. Look at that huge expansion at the Walmart Center. And the more that we focus on opportunities, the more our trajectory will go up over time. So as we conclude this part of it, I want to thank our volunteer visitors and really appreciate their help and their time. They took a day out they took an hour to learn about the visit, and then they took at least a morning, if not longer, to go over to Yates Center and give their reflections. I really appreciate their help with this. Next steps, start talking. Find ways to discuss what you heard in small groups, in all kinds of small groups, whether it's your civic group, your city council. It's not our intention to give you a laundry list of things that your city clerk and your town council need to do. It's our hope that we will invigorate and activate community volunteers like you to find one thing that you could do and gather a group of people to help you do it. So I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about some other resources that are available to you. The Kansas Pride Program is a way from K-State Research and Extension. It was 50 years old in 2020. And it's a way for local communities to identify what they'd like to preserve, create, or improve for their future. And we usually use first impressions as the first step. And well, we've got a community assessment. Let's go forward. And it's a way for people to pull together and create their ideal community future. We're running grant writing workshops, and those workshops are now online. So whether or not you host one in Osage County, you could participate all over the state. Just pick one that suits your time frame and join it. It's about 6 hours long on 2 different days. On the first Friday of every month, we do First Friday E-Call, which stands for entrepreneurship. That whole business of the fact that more of our, more than half of our jobs come from those small businesses is what drives us to hold these calls, because there's an awful lot of resources, whether it be education, experts, or economic resources that are available to your small businesses, and we want you to know all about it. And you can see where the future calls are and where the past calls have been recorded. Here's what I was quoting earlier. There are 2 women named Becky McCrae and Deb Brown, and they are just amazing resources. They run 2 sites, but I really recommend, if you want to improve your small town, that you subscribe to their Small Biz Survival. These ladies are in towns of 8,000 and 3,000 respectively. So they know small towns, and they are researching them all across the world, not just the US, to talk about what's new and what's great and how we can improve small towns. And look at this. They had an article recently about Zoom towns, about the fact that Zoom towns are attracting and supporting remote workers in rural small towns. It's based on the fact that research shows that the only group that doesn't think that small towns are rural is their first choice. I really messed that up. Let's try it again. Americans under age 30 are the only group whose top desired place to live is not rural. Rural was number 2, though, even for that group of people. So when we look at who wants to live rural, everybody does, except for the youngest ones. So these folks have said that the pivot to, and this comes from a resource called Upwork, and they say that the pivot to remote work is the biggest, fastest transformation of the labor market since World War II mobilization. And so we really need to be thinking about how to make our towns the place that they choose, the place that they want to be, because it's a fun place to be and has all the assets they like. These same people run Save Your Town. It's Becky and Deb. And that's where I got this quote about being an idea-friendly town. They really have wonderful live webinars, and you have to pay to watch them, but lately they've been $5 payments. They're never more than $20. For $25 a month, you can have access to any of their cadre of webinars from the last few years. Here's another impact of what's going on. Just in the last 2 months, we've started seeing research from climate change experts saying that every coastal American city, we are seeing a transition from the coast to higher ground. And so while climate change is not something we look forward to, the truth of the matter is people are coming to rural because they want to avoid those climate change impacts. Remember how I told you had 40 websites that were available? Becky and Deb talk about having a calendars and coffee event where you just get together with your calendars and talk about what's coming up. Here was an example in the Topeka Capital Journal in January in Maple Hill, Kansas, where there were 2 businesses. This one started up during the pandemic. She has a website that she uses, but she also has a building and she's trying to keep it going. And so she and the business across the street have really coordinated their social media and their hours for the benefit of both. If you could do that kind of social marketing, that kind of co-marketing, it wouldn't all depend just on the city clerk to put it on the city website. You could all be getting the messages out that your community wants to get out. Be aware that the Kansas Department of Ag wants to work with small communities to talk about the best opportunities for growth using the assets of your community. And for your grocery store, the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative has resources to help with the sustainability of your grocery store and access to healthy food. So those are the resources I want to call your attention to. It's been my pleasure to work with the Carbondale First Impressions team, and I really hope that it will spark some conversations and good ideas in your community. Thanks for joining us.